Hey, Mitch.
Hey Ed, what's up?
Hey, can you believe that there's a sequel to Willow on Disney Plus?
Willow? Geez, that movie came out so long ago.
I know, 1988. I love that movie. I thought we could talk about it. I've been practicing magic and everything like that.
Magic? Ed, you don't know anything about magic.
Yes, I do. Watch here. Are you ready? Balance of essence, fire, begesto. Let's just start the show. Hi, this is Ed Dollister.
This is Mitch Halleck.
And welcome to another exciting episode of Mitch and Ed's Excellent Adventure. If it's your first time here, thanks so much for joining us. If you are a regular viewer, welcome back. We've got a great episode for you today, but before we get into today's topic, Mitch, how can you find out a little bit more about the show?
Oh, Ed, is as simple as going down to the local creek and finding a little baby wrapped up in a basket floating down the river who's going to be eventually the queen of all of your kingdom. All you have to do is hit the subscribe button on the bottom, and you will be subscribed to the Mitch and Ed Excellent Adventure Show, and hit the notification bell, and you will also receive a notification when we have a new episode. And why not just like it because you're a good person? That's it, Ed. Good night. Oh no, I'm sorry.
Very much. Thanks for watching. No, we're going to be talking about Willow from George Lucas, Ron Howard from 1988. Did you see this in the cinemas when it came out?
I think we all did. Yes, I saw it because Star Wars was over. It was a year before the new Indiana Jones movie, and it had the Lucasfilm name on it. And I was a loyal subscriber to the Lucasfilm fan club newsletter, and I would get all the information about the upcoming productions from Lucasfilm. I had the poster. I pre-ordered the one sheet, and of course, I knew who Ron Howard was from like Happy Days and Andy Griffith, but from Splash and Night Shift and
Cocoon?
the other big, Cocoon. So I was looking forward to it, and of course, Willow himself, Warwick Davis, was from Return of the Jedi. So
absolutely, he was Wicket the Ewok.
Yeah, Wicket W. Warwick. That's why I was confused for a second. And then, of course, Val Kilmer was riding high on a bunch of movies, Top Gun and Real Genius. So he was very popular at the time. So, yes, sir. To answer your question, I was there opening weekend, if not opening day. I was looking forward to this film.
And so was I. I was 18. I remember specifically being in the school library, and you're right. Star Wars was over. There wasn't anything on the horizon with regards to that. There was still India around. We knew Last Crusade was coming out, which was fantastic, but there was nothing. And I remember going to the library, and I'd always try and read anything about movies and Star Wars and things like that. And I was reading, I'm 99% sure it was Time magazine, and they had a preview of it in there. And I'm going, oh, this is interesting. Because again, pre-internet, we only got our news from Starlog or, news articles or newspaper articles. And I thought, oh, this sounds, fantasy. This sounds kind of interesting. I quite like Krull. I thought that was kind of fun. And, Sword and the
Labyrinth and Krull and Lady Hawk. There was a slew of sword and sorcery fantasy movies back.
But interestingly, they didn't really do very well at the box office. I suppose Conan the Barbarian did reasonably well. Conan the Destroyer, not so much after that.
Not so much.
There was no Lord of the Rings at this stage, but I knew about Lord of the Rings. I remember watching is it Ralph Bakshi,
who did the animated one. Yeah, he did.
So I remember watching that, and I had the storybook of that, and I thought, oh, this is a little bit Lord of the Rings, and essentially, I suppose it was a bit of a take on that, and I thought this is going to be fantastic. And when I went to watch it, I quite enjoyed it. It wasn't as, I don't know, I wasn't as enamored by it. I think I was still, wanting more Star Wars and Indiana Jones.
No. And to your point too, like you said, now that I think about it, there was a lot of sword and magic sorcery films. There was The Sword and the Sorcerer, which is one of my favorites. We can do that on another show. That
Dragon
was a low
Slayer.
budget. Dragon Slayer, Sword and Sorcery, The Beastmaster, all of them fell into that little kitschy fantasy type thing. But there was The Dark Crystal, there was Labyrinth, there's a more again, Lucasfilm is involved with that. George Lucas is involved with Labyrinth, and the Dark Crystal had Frank Oz and then Jim Henson and such. And it's just this whole slew of fantasy films. Even Legend with Tom Cruise was about to come out, and yeah, I don't know what happened with this. I mean, there were big productions, the money was there, the audiences weren't there though. I mean, they did well. I mean, Willow was not a bomb by any
no, it
not
made it
made
made
like
its
58
money back.
million.
I
Made
think
its
it
money
cost
back.
yeah, I think it cost like $35 million to
35,
make.
37, yeah.
It made 57 million at the US box office. It made 137 at the global box office. So it was a big hit, but
no, it wasn't. I think the critics gave it a hard time though. I don't
they
think
did. Well, I think the reason was, I mean, they always seem to bash a lot of George Lucas's productions. The previous production to this would have been Howard the Duck, of course, in '86.
Yeah. And that
And
wasn't Twice Upon a Time. He had an animated film that he did.
Now that was early on in that was maybe '83. I think it was 83, 84.
It was around, right after Jedi. I knew there was something else.
That's actually a really good a really good animated story. So as is what is it? Strange Magic by the computer generated film that ILM did is actually quite good. That came and went. You should watch it. It's really quite good.
I don't know. I never even heard of it.
Yeah, it was cost $100 million.
And then he did it. There was a Japanese movie he did. Kurosawa, was that?
Yeah, with Akira Kurosawa, and it was Ran.
Was that George was involved with that?
And Francis Ford Coppola, they produced it.
They have, wasn't the director going blind or something, if I recall, and they had to help him finish the production. But it was a very lavish production. I mean, the costume, and I just remember the visuals was a huge thing that Lucas had done. But at this time, though, George Lucas himself, he had just gotten divorced. He adopted some kids. He was involved heavily with Disney, Walt Disney parks. He was working with Michael Jackson. They were doing like Captain EO. There was a lot going on. And then there was Pixar was coming into its own at that point. He was still working with John Lasseter, I think, or he might have sold it at this point. And there was Lucas Games, Lucas Arts. There was a lot going on at Lucasfilm. And the thing of it is, Willow itself, the story by George Lucas, actually predates Star Wars because he started this idea in 1973 with a story called Munchkins. Yes. And basically it was kind of like a fantasy world where you have the evil empire and you have the small people that rise up and rebel, kind of like the Ewoks. But he had this before Star Wars. So he was thinking a long time about a magical story with elves or dwarves or whatever you want to call the folks in the movie. But it was there for a while. But I think he said the technology just wasn't there yet.
That's
in the 70s. So he went on to do Star Wars. But once the 80s came around and he saw what they could do, he told this to Ron Howard. And Ron Howard was actually looking to get into like a big fantasy type of thing because he was making his name for himself, like we said with those other films. Cocoon.
Well, he was actually working on the visual effects for Cocoon at Industrial Light and Magic, and that's when he was speaking with George Lucas, and that's when they connected, saying, well, I've got a great story. I think this might be a good fit for you." So it had all the right elements. It had, as you said, Val Kilmer. Warwick Davis was great. I mean, I think he's, fantastic in the role of
he is.
Willow.
He's only 17, which is amazing.
He did an amazing job.
He's just a kid, and this is really his only first big speaking part.
Yes.
Because I wouldn't consider playing the Ewok in the TV movies and the Return of the Jedi as really a, thespian showcase there because he didn't say anything. But no, he's 17. He's playing the lead of this movie. It's called Willow. It's about him. And then he's supposed to be a father. He has 2 children in the story, and he finds the baby, Laura, and then and mayhem ensues after that. But there's a lot of other Lucasfilm tie-ins too, because all us Indiana Jones fans know Pat Roach, who you might know as the evil German mechanic and the thuggy guard from the Indiana Jones films. He plays the big guy. Is it Kale?
General Kale. And do you know why he was called General Kale?
Named after film critic Pauline Kael from the New York Times who used to roast Lucas a lot with her movie reviews.
That's right. In fact, I had a lot of her collected reviews. I must read. They're fantastic to read her reviews.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what? There's another critic connection in
Oh yeah, the two of them, Siskel
yeah.
and
So
Ebert.
you've got this fantastic I suppose almost the climax of the movie where a troll gets thrown into the water and turns into this two-headed fantastic stop motion
Yeah,
beast, which I thought was absolutely
I
fantastic
thought it was
by
good. Yeah, that's Phil Tippett doing all
yes.
that back then. Yeah,
And you found out, well, in some of the press materials, you found out that was named Eborsisk, was the name of the creature, of
it
course.
was Ebert
After
and Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel's name. Ebert and
correct.
Siskel combined. Correctamundo. Yeah, so yeah, he had a thing, little tongue-in-cheek jab at some of the critics that were like, so I don't know why he picked on Siskel and Ebert. They were always very fond. I know Roger Ebert was always a big champion of George Lucas's stuff. He was
Well,
always
consequently, they gave it 2 thumbs down. The movie.
Oh, did they really?
Yes.
Oh wow. Yeah, like you said, it's one of those movies. It's hard to put a finger on why it wasn't a bigger hit because overall it's entertaining, it moves well. There's a lot of comedy in it, which I don't know was intentional or it just so happened to be when they put it together. There's some funny parts to it.
Yeah,
Like
and you
Willow,
had the Brownies, Rick Overton, and
the Brownies,
Kevin
yeah, the
Pollak.
R2 and the R2 and 3PO, this movie,
Yes.
the little guys that were running around with French accents, weren't they?
They seem to be French. Yeah,
Yeah, I never understood that. Like, oh, what are you doing? I'm like, how are they French? But I don't know.
You had Joanne Whalley as Saoirse, Jean Marsh, who was fantastic as Bav Morda, who
was also in
Return to
Return to Oz,
playing a similar sort of character, I
yeah,
guess.
which is there's another Star Wars connection because Gary Kurtz, who was the producer of Star Wars and Empire, went and made Return to Oz.
He did
so.
indeed. And
Yeah.
we've got to remember there was also
Billy Barty.
Oh, well, Billy Barty, yes. Kenny Baker actually makes a cameo in it.
Oh, really? I didn't
Yeah,
know
he's
Kenny
a band member apparently in the background. But there's a Happy Days connection other than
who?
Well, other than Ron Howard, of course, the director, but playing Thor Bear is Gavin O'Harley, the who was the original Chuck.
That was Chuck Cunningham.
Yes.
I thought that, and he was also what is it, Chad in Superman 3 or whatever, Biff, the mean, yeah, that was the mean boyfriend.
No, yeah, no,
Lana Lang.
yeah, he was Lana Lang's boyfriend, wasn't it? Brad,
yeah, right?
Brad, I think it was
Brad. That's it. Yeah. Okay, no, I thought he looked familiar because I was watching for this review, and I'm like, that looks like Chuck Cunningham.
Yeah, so
that must have been Ron Howard. He owed him a favor. He's like, ever since you went up the stairs and never came back, I felt guilty. So here's a movie for you.
That's right.
Who else makes a cameo?
I was going to say the production design is fantastic. That General Kale armor, which I think we spoke about in our Highlander episode, looks reminded me of the Kurgan a lot. But you know, the filming locations, they film in Wales, they filmed in New Zealand before,
yeah.
Before Lord of the Rings. They tried to film in China, but they weren't allowed. They weren't given permission, so they got someone to take some plate photography there and brought that back. So it looked fantastic, and the score by
James Horner
was fantastic. He did do Krull, he did do Star Trek 2, and he's known for
some of those elements. Yeah, you could.
And that Willow's theme, I remember going to the theater in 1989 to see Last Crusade many times. And they had a trailer to Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
And they played that, yeah.
And what music did they use?
The Willows. It was yeah, it was kind of almost like the Ewoks march type of thing, that John Williams type of sound to it. But no,
a wonderful score, which again helps.
It's a very catchy score, yeah. And there's a version of it they play on a flute, which is really cool too.
Yes,
you'll see that in the movie. There's a little flute solo with the same.
So the score was fantastic. It was nominated for 2 Academy Awards. It lost out to Who Framed Roger Rabbit for visual effects and sound editing. And I just remember reading a review of it, back in the day, and they were just saying all the elements were there, but other movies did it better. And I remember them specifically saying that the chase on the snow with the shield, they recently did that in the Living, was it the Living
Living
Daylights, the
Daylights,
James Bond, where she
the
was on the
James Bond. They
cello,
did, yeah, well, the
and they
cello.
were saying, yeah, they did it better there, and they did a bit better this. So I don't know. It was, I still enjoyed it, and it's a great
No,
show
no,
to
no, you're
watch.
right though, because when you talk about Willow, I remember the whole escape in the snow. I remember the Siskel and Ebert dragon thing, him transforming, the first use of morphine
Morphing, yeah.
technology.
Yep, they called it transmorphigation, I think it was.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, that was amazing. They were trying to figure out, they did puppets in mid stages, and they were going to do cross dissolves and things like that. And then they were just going, well, let's bring it to our computer division, and they can
Yeah.
seamlessly do that. And of course, they used it in that, and then the year later in Indiana Jones Last Crusade, when they were doing that with Walter Donovan's death,
Yeah.
where they morphed that. And then when was Star Trek 6? Was that 91?
Oh, when they had Amon as
Shatner and Amon, where they morphed in because she was a shape shifter. So
yeah, when he went to the prison, Praxis.
That's right.
Praxis blew up, and then he went to, I just thought of it the other day. It was the Klingon prison planet.
Yes. So there's so you know, that technology is quite amazing. The visual effects are still very good.
Ruapente.
Oh, okay.
That's
Thank
the
you.
prison planet.
And
a doctor, could have cured cancer, but no. Ruapente is what's stuck into the brain. Sorry, America.
That's all right. The world.
Curse
the
you,
world.
Star Trek. Yeah, the world. The world's lost in Star Trek's gain.
Yeah. The also the other thing that was I thought was quite good was the blue screen or green screen work that they did with the brownies, some of that interaction. Remember, again, this is really quite early on with regards to computer technology, and I think they did an amazing job.
You know what? There's a weird deleted scene that's in the comic book because Marvel Comics made an adaptation. I have that here somewhere. They did the 3 issues, and then they did like a super special where they would collect all 3 in one book. But there's Willow leaves on his own, and he crosses this lake or something, and there's this weird fish with a lot of teeth, which reminds me of the fish that shows up later on in the Phantom Menace.
Yep.
Yeah, it looks like the same thing. But then the fish transform into like a weird little boy with a bald head and sharp teeth. I don't know what that was about, but they don't use it in the movie. They did film it though. I think you can see it on some deleted scenes somewhere, but it's in the comic. It's like Willow uses his magic to fight this fish monster, and it turns into a fish boy. Fish boy. Yeah, exactly. Really weird scene in the movie, but I don't know. So the movie comes out, does okay. We went to see it. I remember that they had a Japanese Lucasfilm or George Lucas spectacular, like on ice. And I remember getting the program was in Japanese, but I got it. And they had the world of George Lucas. It was kind of like a Walt Disney thing. So they had Star Wars, obviously. They had Indiana Jones, but they also had Willow. And Willow was kind of like the third part of the Trinity. They were really hoping this would spin off.
Well, he hoped it would do as, like ET numbers, which unfortunately it didn't. But it did very well in Japan. As you said, there wasn't a lot of merchandise. There was a board game that they brought out.
I was gonna say, there was figures. I remember.
Well, they weren't action figures really. They were like metal, just
they were just like molded
PVC, static little figures. Of course, they've brought out Reaction have just brought out
oh, did they?
Like vintage style Willow figures now. From the original.
There was a lot of video games. I remember there was a
great arcade game by Capcom, which I loved playing, a side scroller. They also had a Nintendo I think a top-down game as well, sort of a bit like a role-playing game or on there. So they had that, they had board games. Yes, they did have a lunchbox and thermos.
You have to have a lunchbox and thermos to be legit.
But it was plastic.
Oh.
So it's not as cool. They also they had the novel. Yeah, so I've got the novel there.
Is it by Alan Dean Foster?
It's not. It's by Waylon Drew, who sounds like a country and western singer. But
I know. I was gonna say I've got all his album.
Yeah, that's right. Based on the script by Bob Dolman.
We should do a show all about Alan Dean Foster, because if there was any movie adaptations in the 80s and 70s, that guy wrote everything.
So. Oh my gosh, did he ever? So yeah, that's true. So
was there a calendar?
I don't know if there. I haven't. I never had one.
You know, one of the things we don't talk. One of the things we don't talk about on the show, besides Lunchbox and board games and figures, there was usually a calendar that went with all of it. And then, like I said, the one sheet, which I'm going to say is Drew Struzan artwork. Maybe.
Was it John Alvin?
Maybe it's John Alvin. I could have thought it was Struzan. I don't know. It's been a while.
I don't think that's Struzan.
No.
Have a look.
No, that's not Drew Struzan's work. But I could have swore I saw a different Willow poster that actually had, whenever you saw full figures and like photo reference images, it was usually Drew Struzan. I know that's not the poster I had in my room that I bought from the Lucasfilm.
No, there's a number of different posters.
They had like an A,
yes.
Yeah, style A, style B, one sheets and stuff. I know I had a different one than that. But there were sequels, but they were in the form of novels.
Yes.
And they were done by Chris Claremont, who I'm well aware of. Not only has he been a guest at Terrificon, but he's the scribe of the X-Men and a lot of the great Marvel stories that you find. And he sat down with George Lucas, because he told me this story when we talked once, and he brought a tape recorder, and they gave him a couple hours with George Lucas. And he brought the tape recorder in there, and he loaded it up, and he said, okay, what do you want to know? What's going to happen to Willow? What's going to happen to Laura? And they sat there, and George Lucas just gave them everything. Like, well, she's going to grow up, and she's going to become a warrior, and then her mother's going to be tainted by the evil witch of her mother, so her grandmother's going to come back, and there's going to be this other force that comes into play. So what happened is Chris Claremont recorded all this conversation with George Lucas, went off, and there was a trilogy of books.
Yes, the first one came out Shadow Moon
Shadow
series.
Dawn, Shadow Moon, and then the Shadow something else. There's a third one that came out. So it was like 94, 98, and then 2002, I believe. That was the entire cycle of the Willow stories.
And they were, I remember reading it, and I thought, oh, I actually don't like what's happening here. They killed off, spoiler, they killed off Mad Mardigan and Sorsha in the first book. It's sort of basically George Lucas wasn't too happy with how they turned out, and pretty much sort, not disown them, but sort of,
let's just focus on Willow, which is what he did.
They're not really canon. And of course now, there is that cult. People, even though it wasn't super popular, it was popular to a certain demographic, and it has reached cult status. And of course, when things have cult status, that means they're often brought back. And they will always, I was reading an interview with oh my gosh,
Warwick Davis told this. I saw him at a Disney World appearance. He was talking about a TV series back in like the early 2000s. They were planning on doing a Willow TV show or something back.
And I know George Lucas had always wanted more to happen with it. And I was thinking Lawrence Kasdan's son.
Well, yes, he's the one that scribed the new show.
Yes, so he
Jonathan
Kennedy mentioned that that would be a good thing, and they thought having a Laura as a main, not the main character, but a grown-up character would be a great way to segue into this like legacy sequel. And it's just debuted on Disney Plus, and I haven't seen it yet because I've been flat out doing a show. I plan to watch the first couple of episodes over the weekend. What did you think?
I watched it. I watched the first episode. Again, it's always fun to watch these characters that you watched 35 years ago, whatever. And there was Warwick Davis. He was back as Willow.
Is he wearing practically the same clothes, the same color scheme, or what? I'm going, really, after 32 years, surely we all wear different clothes, don't we?
The shirt's about 20 years old. But anyway, I got this over at Lucasfilm, actually. Funny that you said this. But no, it starts off, obviously Billy Barty's gone, and some of the characters that you saw in the first movie make an appearance, so it's kind of fun to watch that. I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, but it's there. I've only seen 2 episodes, so it's hard to judge where it's going to go. A lot of
Does it?
times,
Can
it's
I
like,
can I ask? Does it
yeah.
feel like it's Willow? You know, sometimes you watch these shows and you're going, "Oh, it doesn't look like it's in the universe."
Well, it
Whereas
look
Andor, you
obviously,
know, it looks like it's part of the Star Wars universe. Does Willow look like
obviously
it?
it looks like it because he's in it and Joanne Wally is in it. But
Do you think we'll see Mad Mardigan?
no, you're not. Well, you want to ruin it? He's not going to be
No,
in season 1. No, but you asked.
I said, do you think you'll
No,
see?
eventually we will, but
Okay.
not this time.
Oh,
Not
that,
this time, because the real world interfered with production. Val Kilmer, who I've had at my show, who's been a
yes,
guest at my Terrificon, has had some health issues, and this film was made. The TV series was made during COVID protocols, so as a precaution, they didn't think it was the smartest thing to do to bring
sure.
Mr. Kilmer on there if he had, some subjectiveness that he might get infected or whatever. So he's not part of the earlier production, but there's always room for him to come back because he just
Of
came
course.
back in Top Gun Maverick and he's still
Yes.
working and he's done some other
Yeah.
stuff too. So there's that. There's a beautiful young actress in the movie. Not that I'm smitten with her. I already looked her up. She plays the daughter of how do you say her name? Sora? Sure.
Sorsha?
Sorsha, yeah. She has 2 children, a boy and a girl. So she plays the daughter, who's more like her father. She's like an adventurer and a sword wielding, warrior type thing. And then the son takes after the father's, well, scoundrel ways. He's
Ah,
too
yes.
busy, making out with girls and wink, wink, nod, nod. He's more into that.
Say no
So
more.
they have those 2 children. The actress, who, no offense to the actress, I just don't like her. She was in Solo.
Oh, yes.
She was in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and she
Yes.
showed up in this show too. And I'm like, every time I see her, she's got a, she's always this, like, I don't know how to describe it.
Playing the
It's like
same character
same
or,
cat
same
exactly. She's
style of
from
character?
here. She is again, as I want to do good, but I'm held back. And I'm
I
like, it
am.
seems to be she's typecast. And as soon as you see her, I go, oh boy, here we go. And sure enough, she seems to be the same character again.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was okay. It was okay. Like I said, there's always a nostalgic feel to see Warwick back. He's great, and the music plays, and he's doing his magic, and it's fun to see him. It's always
Yep.
been fun to watch his career.
Have you ever,
'Cause
you haven't had Warwick Davis at,
no, I've inquired about getting him. He's not easy to get a hold of
yeah,
to come over. This was before the lockdown.
yeah,
It was just hard to get him because I mean, who wouldn't want to have him? He's
yeah.
Willow. He's Warwick Davis. He's got that Life is Short show he did with
Ricky Gervais.
Ricky
He's got,
Gervais and
he's
such.
been, I
Yeah.
mean, he's been in so many iterations of,
Oh my God. Yeah.
you
Think of
know,
all these Harry Potter films, the Leprechaun films. He's been in so many different movies over the last 30, 40 years now.
yeah,
So yeah, he's a little iconic character himself. I've met him a
yep.
couple times. I've met him at shows. I've met him in Disney World. Nice fella.
Yeah, he seems
Uh,
like a down to earth
yeah.
kind of guy. So that's kind of
Yeah.
really
No,
good.
he's always he yelled at my son. I have a picture of us upstairs, and he's telling my son off. So that's kind of fun.
Oh,
It was fun. My son was being a little spoiled brat at Disney World, and Warwick was watching the whole thing transpire. And then he looked over. He's like, "Hey, you be nice to your father. He did a lot to get you here." And I was like, "You tell
was
him, Wicked."
was Warwick Davis from the 1930s some sort of banker? Now look here, boy. I'll tell you what was that accent?
That was my Warwick Davis. That's how he
Okay.
sounded. Yeah.
Anyway,
Your parents did a lot to get you here.
okay,
Now listen to
right.
me. He did. He talked like that. No, you
Okay.
stop.
Anyway, so Willow the series is on now on Disney Plus. Willow the movie is also on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Available for streaming. It's available on DVD, video, VHS,
Everything.
everything.
4K.
I don't think
Yeah.
there's a 4K of Willow
What?
out. Is there?
There
I
has
haven't
to be.
You would think there would be. I know
Oh,
there's a
by now
Blu-ray,
everything's
but
4K. We're in 4K.
yeah, that's right. We're in 12K. Come on.
We are.
Yeah,
We're in special K.
yeah, that's right. Special needs probably more than special
Well,
K for
hey,
us,
let's
but
not go there.
So anyway, so Willow's a great movie to rewatch, and certainly I would recommend watching it just before watching Willow, because you know.
Oh yeah. Don't just turn on. You wouldn't know what the hell's going on if you didn't watch Willow.
Like with us, you wouldn't know what the hell's going on if you haven't watched some of our previous episodes. And how could you do that, Mitch?
Oh, and it is as simple as freeing Mad Mardigan from a little tiny cage where he's going to get out and run away. Just got to hit the subscribe button below, and you too will be subscribed on our next adventure, just like Willow goes on. And who knows where we'll end up?
Who knows? In fact,
maybe we'll talk like this. Hey,
all right. That's
like
Eddie Deason. Oh no, you got Eddie Deason's voice now.
Hey guys, look, I'm eating nitrous oxide. Hey, talking.
All right, so you might even know what adventure we're going on because you might have a suggestion. So remember to put that in the comments. And that's it. So check out Willow and check out our other episodes. Thanks so much for joining us. This is Ed Dollister.
This is Mitch Halleck.
And we'll see you next episode. All the best.